The morning sun rose over New Eden like it had every day for the past 15 years. Golden light spread across the green fields where corn and wheat grew tall and strong. Children ran through the grass, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze. This was home for 50,000 people who had traveled across the stars to build something beautiful. Jake Morrison stood on his office balcony, watching the kids play in the park below. At 45, he had gray hair at his temples and lines, around his eyes from years of smiling. He had been the colony administrator since the first day they landed on this world. Back then, New Eden was nothing but empty plains and forests. Now it was a real home with schools, hospitals, shops, and farms. "Another peaceful day," said Lisa Rodriguez as she joined him on the balcony. She was the head of colony security. A strong woman with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her uniform was clean and pressed, though she rarely needed to use the weapon at her side. Crime was almost unknown on New Eden. "The kids seem happy," Jake said, pointing to where. 10-year-old Danny Martinez was teaching some younger children how to throw a ball. "Remember when Danny first got here? He was so scared of everything." Lisa smiled. "Now look at him, leading the pack as usual." Below them, 8-year-old Katie Sullivan ran up to Danny with a flower she had picked. She had bright red hair and freckles across her nose. Her parents ran the bakery in town, and she always smelled like fresh bread when she hugged people. Dr. Susan Blake walked past the park, carrying her medical bag. She waved up at Jake and Lisa before heading to the clinic. At 60, she was one of the oldest people on New Eden, but she still worked every day taking care of anyone who got sick or hurt. She had delivered over 2,000 babies since they arrived on this world. "Hard to believe we've been here 15 years, Jake said. "Sometimes I still can't believe we actually did it. We turned an empty planet into a real home." "Best decision I ever made, coming here," Lisa replied. "My kids grew up here. They don't even remember Earth." The communication device on Jake's belt buzzed. He picked it up and heard the voice of Tommy Chun, who worked in the Space Traffic Control Tower. "Jake, we've got something on the long-range sensors. You should probably come take a look." Jake and Lisa looked at each other. Ships didn't come to New Eden very often. Maybe once or twice a year, supply vessels would arrive from Earth or one of the other colonies. They weren't expecting anyone. "On my way," Jake said into the device. The control tower sat on a hill overlooking the main town. Inside, Tommy Chun stared at a screen full of green dots and numbers. He was young, maybe 25, with nervous energy that made him tap his fingers when he was worried. Right now, he was tapping very fast. "What do you see?" Jake asked. 12 ships, Tommy said, pointing at the screen. "Big ones. Really big. They're still 2 days out, but Jake, I've never seen ships like these before." Lisa leaned over Tommy's shoulder to look at the readings. "How big are we talking?" "The smallest one is twice the size of our biggest cargo ship." "The largest ... double quotes." Tommy shook his head. "I don't even know how something that big can fly." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "Are they human ships?" "I don't think so. The design is all wrong, and they're not responding to our radio calls." For 15 years, New Eden had been alone among the stars. They had never met another intelligent species. Earth's deep space explorers had found empty worlds and dead civilizations, but never anyone still alive. Jake had always wondered when humanity would meet other people from other worlds. He had hoped it would be friendly. "Keep trying to talk to them," Jake said. "Send them every greeting message we have. Let them know we're peaceful." Over the next 2 days, the unknown ships grew larger on the sensors. The people of New Eden went about their daily lives, but everyone could feel that something was different. Parents held their children a little closer. Farmers looked up at the sky more. Often Jake called together his council. There was Lisa, Dr. Susan Blake, Father Miguel Santos, who led the church, Teacher Mary Williams, who ran the schools, and Engineer Bob Taylor, who kept all their machines working. "We need to talk about what happens when they arrive," Jake said. "We have to assume they might not be friendly." "What can we do if they're not?" asked Mary Williams. She was a small woman with gray hair who had taught hundreds of children over the years. "We have one defense platform and 6 patrol ships. If they wanted to hurt us, we couldn't stop them." "We have evacuation ships," said Bob Taylor. "If we need to leave, we can." "Leave?" Dr. Susan Blake looked shocked. "This is our home. We built this place with our own hands. If we have to choose between our home and our lives, I know which one I pick," Lisa said quietly. Jake had been thinking about this same thing for 2 days. The evacuation ships could carry 30,000 people at a time. They would need to make 2 trips to save everyone. But that would take time, and if the aliens were hostile, they might not have time. "If we need to evacuate," Jake said slowly, "the children go first." Everyone was quiet for a moment. Finally, Father Miguel nodded. "The children are our future. If we save no one else, we save them." On the morning of the 3rd day, the alien ships arrived. Jake stood in the control tower with Lisa and Tommy, watching as 12 massive vessels descended from the sky. They were dark, almost black, with sharp edges and strange curves. They looked like they were built for war. The largest ship was so big it blocked out the sun when it passed overhead. The smaller ones spread out around New Eden's main settlement, hovering silently in the air. "Still no response to our messages," Tommy said. His hands were shaking now. Then, finally, a voice came through the radio. It was cold and harsh, speaking words in English, but with an accent that made them sound wrong. "Attention, human settlement. This world belongs to the Korthak Empire. You have 1 rotation of your sun to depart. After that time, all life on this world will be destroyed." Jake grabbed the radio. "This is Administrator Jake Morrison of New Eden Colony. We are peaceful people. We've lived here for 15 years. Can we talk about this?" The voice came back immediately. "You have 1 rotation. Prepare to leave or be destroyed." Then silence. Jake looked at Lisa, then at Tommy, then out the window at the alien ships hanging in the sky like dark clouds. Below them, people had stopped what they were doing and were pointing up at the vessels. Children pressed their faces against school windows, wondering what the big ships were doing. "Get me the evacuation commanders," Jake said quietly, "and start calling people in from the farms. We're leaving New Eden." But even as he said the words, Jake knew they were in terrible trouble. 1 day wasn't enough time. They couldn't save everyone. And somewhere in his heart, he was starting to understand that the aliens in those dark ships weren't going to let anyone leave at all. The evacuation began at dawn. Jake Morrison had made the hardest choice of his life during the long, sleepless night. The children would go first, along with enough adults to take care of them. Then the ships would come back for everyone else. Parents lined up outside the spaceport, holding their children tight. Many were crying. Danny Martinez clung to his mother Maria, not understanding why he had to leave without her. 8-year-old Katie Sullivan held her father's hand with both of hers, her bright red hair messy from tossing and turning all night. "I don't want to go without you, Daddy," Katie whispered. Her father, Paul Sullivan, knelt down and looked into her green eyes. "You have to be brave for me, sweetheart. We'll see each other again very soon." "I promise." But Paul knew he might be lying. The alien ships hung overhead like dark clouds, waiting. They had been silent all night, not responding to any messages. Jake had tried everything. Offers to share the planet, requests for more time, even offers to pay for the right to stay. Nothing worked. Dr. Susan Blake moved through the crowd, checking on the children who would be leaving. She had volunteered to go with them, even though she was 60 years old and could have stayed with the adults. Someone needs to take care of them, she had told Jake. And I've been taking care of children my whole life. Lisa Rodriguez stood near the loading ramp of the first evacuation ship, checking names off a list. 8,000 children and 2,000 adults would fit on this ship. The youngest children went first, babies and toddlers who couldn't understand what was happening. Boarding Group 1, Lisa called out, ages 0 to 4 years. Parents kissed their babies goodbye and handed them to the adult volunteers who would watch over them. Teachers, doctors, and other caregivers took the children in their arms. Many of the adults were crying too. Captain Roy Davis checked his ship's systems one more time. He was a good pilot who had been flying between the colonies for 20 years. His ship was called the New Hope, and he could make the jump to the nearest human outpost in 3 days. We'll be back for the rest of you, he promised Jake. Count on it. The first ship lifted off, just as the sun reached its highest point in the sky. Parents stood in the spaceport, watching their children disappear into the blue sky. Some waved. Others just stood quietly, holding each other. Boarding Group 2, Lisa called. Ages 5 to 8 years. Katie Sullivan was in this group. She ran to her parents one more time, wrapping her arms around both of them. I love you, she said. We love you too, baby, her mother Sarah said. Be good for the teachers, okay? Danny Martinez was in the third group, ages 9 to 12. When his name was called, he didn't want to let go of his mother. Why can't you come with me? He asked. Because there's not enough room on the ship for everyone, Maria explained. But we'll be on the next one, I promise. By late afternoon, all 12,000 children were aboard the 2 evacuation ships. The New Hope was already gone, carrying the youngest ones to safety. The second ship, called Freedom's Light, was almost ready to launch with the older children. That's when everything went wrong. Jake was in the control tower when Tommy Chan's voice cracked with fear. Jake, the alien ships are moving. They're powering up weapons. What? Jake grabbed his radio. Roy, get out of here now. Take the children and run. Captain Roy Davis was already pushing his engines to full power. The New Hope was climbing toward space as fast as she could go. We're trying, Jake, but they're coming after us. Through the control tower windows, Jake could see the alien ships moving. They were sleek and dark, like sharks in the water. Bright lights appeared on their hulls. Weapons charging up. Roy, you need to jump to hyperspace now. Jake shouted into the radio. 30 more seconds until we're clear of the gravity well, Roy replied. His voice was steady, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. The alien ships opened fire. Beams of bright red energy lanced through the sky. The first beam missed the New Hope by only a few hundred feet. The second beam hit the ship's rear engine. Jake watched in horror as the ship that carried 8,000 children exploded in a ball of fire. The explosion was so bright, it lit up the afternoon sky like a second sun. Pieces of the ship fell burning toward the ground. There were no survivors. Down in the spaceport. Parents saw the explosion too. Screams filled the air as mothers and fathers realized their children were gone. Maria Martinez fell to her knees, crying out Danny's name. Paul and Sarah Sullivan held each other and wept. Launch now, Jake screamed at the second ship. Get out of here. But it was too late. More red beams fell from the sky, striking the Freedom's Light before it could even leave the ground. The ship exploded on the landing pad, killing all 4,000 children inside in an instant. Then the aliens began landing. Dark ships descended from the sky, touching down all around New Eden's settlements. Doors opened and creatures poured out They walked on two legs like humans, but they were covered in crystal-like armor that gleamed in the sunlight. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but Jake could see glowing red eyes behind the visors. These were the Korthik. They began shooting immediately. Red energy beams swept across the spaceport, cutting down anyone who tried to run. Parents who had just lost their children were killed where they stood. Lisa Rodriguez drew her weapon and began firing back, but her bullets bounced off the crystal armor like raindrops. "Everyone get to the shelters," she shouted, but there was nowhere to run. The Korthik had landed everywhere at once. They moved through the town methodically, destroying everything they found. The school where Danny Martinez had learned to read burned to the ground. The bakery where Katie Sullivan's parents worked was reduced to rubble. Dr. Susan Blake had stayed behind to help with the evacuation. She was in the medical center when the Korthik soldiers broke down the doors. She had 6 young children with her, kids who had been too sick to travel on the evacuation ships. "Please," she said, standing in front of the children with her arms spread wide. "They're just babies. They can't hurt you." The Korthik soldier looked at her with those glowing red eyes. Then he raised his weapon and fired. Dr. Blake fell and fall. The soldier stepped over her body to kill the children behind her. All across New Eden, the same scene played out again and again. The Korthik showed no mercy. They killed farmers in their fields. They destroyed the power plant and the water treatment center. They burned the library where thousands of books were stored. Jake stayed in the control tower as long as he could, trying to coordinate the defense. But Lisa's security forces were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Her officers fought bravely, but their weapons couldn't hurt the enemy. "Jake, we have to go," Tommy Chun said. Blood ran down his face from a cut on his forehead. "They're in the building." Jake looked out the window one last time. New Eden was burning. Bodies lay in the streets. The Korthik moved through the town like a plague, destroying everything humans had built. He picked up his radio and sent one final message to Earth. "This is New Eden Colony. We are under attack by an alien species called the Korthik. They have killed our children, all of them. 12,000 kids dead. Don't let this stand. Don't let them get away with this." Then Jake heard footsteps on the stairs. The Korthik had found them. The last thing Jake Morrison saw was a red energy beam coming toward his face. The last thing he thought about was Danny Martinez teaching younger kids how to throw a ball, and Katie Sullivan picking flowers in the meadow. By sunset, New Eden was silent. 50,000 people had lived there that morning. Now they were all dead. The Korthik had killed every man, woman, and child they could find. They burned the bodies and destroyed the buildings until nothing was left but ashes and rubble. Only one ship had escaped the New Hope, carrying 8,000 children to safety. But even that small victory was temporary. The children would grow up knowing that their parents, their friends, their entire world had been wiped out for no reason except alien cruelty. The Korthik ships left New Eden that night, moving on to find other worlds to conquer. They thought they had won a simple victory against a weak species that couldn't fight back. They had no idea what they had just started. The news reached Earth 3 days later. Captain Roy Davis brought the New Hope into orbit around humanity's home world with 8,000 orphan children. And the most terrible story anyone had ever heard. Danny Martinez sat in the ship's medical bay, staring at nothing. He hadn't spoken since watching his home world burn through the ship's windows. The 10-year-old boy who used to laugh and play was gone, replaced by someone much older and sadder. Katie Sullivan cried for her parents every night. The 8-year-old, with bright red hair, woke up screaming, calling for her mother and father who would never answer. Dr. Susan Blake was dead too, killed while trying to protect other children. Katie had no one left. The story spread across human space faster than any ship could travel. Video messages, news reports, and personal accounts flooded the communication networks. Images of New Eden before the attack showed happy children playing in green fields. Images after the attack showed only burning ruins and empty graves. President Amanda Foster called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Federation Council. Representatives from 47 human worlds gathered in the great hall on Earth, their faces grim. Many had children of their own. All of them understood what the Korthik had done. 12,000 children, President Foster said, her voice heavy with grief, murdered while they played, while they learned, while they slept in their beds. The Korthik didn't attack our military bases or our factories. They targeted schools and hospitals and homes. Admiral Carl Bennett stood to address the council. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes who had spent 30 years protecting human colonies from pirates and raiders. But he had never faced anything like this. The Korthik Empire controls 40 star systems, Admiral Bennett reported. They have over 200 warships and have been expanding aggressively for the past century. Intelligence reports suggest they've wiped out 3 other species completely. What do they want? Asked Senator Lisa Chung from the Mars colonies. Everything, Bennett replied. They don't negotiate. They don't share. They take what they want and destroy anything that gets in their way. Dr. Nathan Price, humanity's leading expert on alien biology, had been studying the few pieces of Korthik technology recovered from border skirmishes. He was a quiet man who usually worked alone in his laboratory, but today he addressed the full council. I've analyzed their weapons and armor, Dr. Price said. The Korthik are an old species, but they're dying. Their birth rate has dropped to almost nothing over the past few centuries. They believe that by claiming worlds with strong life energy, they can restore their ability to reproduce. So they're stealing planets to save their species, said Governor Roberts from the Alpha Centauri system. That's their excuse, Dr. Price replied. But they could have asked for help. They could have shared planets with other species. Instead, they chose genocide. President Foster stood again. The room fell silent as she looked at each representative in turn. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but filled with iron determination. The Korthik made a choice when they attacked New Eden. They chose to murder our children. Today, we make our choice about what humanity will become. The vote was unanimous. Every human world agreed. There would be war, but this would not be an ordinary war. Admiral Bennett was given unlimited resources and complete authority to build a war machine unlike anything humanity had ever created. Every shipyard in human space began working around the clock. Every scientist and engineer was called to contribute. Commander Helen Torres was put in charge of Project Omega, the secret program to develop weapons specifically designed to kill Korthik. She set up hidden laboratories on 12 different worlds, each working on different aspects of the same goal: complete and total victory. We're not trying to defeat them, Commander Torres told her team leaders during their first meeting. We're not trying to push them back or make them surrender. We're going to erase them from the universe. Dr. Nathan Price threw himself into his research with frightening intensity. He worked 18 hours a day, studying every piece of Korthik technology he could find. He learned how their crystal armor worked, how their weapons functioned, and most importantly, how their bodies could be destroyed. Their armor resonates at a specific frequency, he explained to the weapons team. If we can build weapons that match that frequency, we can shatter their protection like glass. As scientists also developed biological weapons. The Korthik had a unique blood chemistry that made them vulnerable to certain toxins. Dr. Price created compounds that would be harmless to humans, but deadly to any Korthik who breathed them. They want to wipe out other species, Dr. Price said. quietly as he worked. "Let's see how they like it." Meanwhile, the children of New Eden were moved to the most heavily defended worlds in human space. Danny Martinez was taken to a military facility on Earth, where doctors tried to help him speak. Again, Katie Sullivan was placed with a foster family on Luna, but she still woke up screaming every night. The other children were scattered across human space, but they all carried the same trauma. They had watched their parents die. They had seen their world burn. They would never forget what the Korthik had done to them. Admiral Bennett visited the children whenever he could. He wanted to remember why humanity was preparing for war. During one visit to Earth, he sat with Danny Martinez in a quiet garden. "I know you can't talk right now," the Admiral said gently, "but I want you to know that we're going to make them pay for what they did. Every single one of them." Danny looked up at the Admiral with eyes that seemed far too old for a 10-year-old face. He didn't speak, but Admiral Bennett saw something in those eyes that chilled him. The boy understood exactly what the Admiral meant. 18 months after, New Eden, the Terran War Fleet was ready. 150 ships designed for one purpose: killing Korthik. Each ship carried weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Built by scientists who had studied their enemy with cold hatred, the ships were painted black with red markings. On the hull of every vessel was the same image: a white flower, like the ones Katie Sullivan used to pick in the meadows of New Eden. Below the flower were the words for the children. Admiral Bennett stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Retribution. Around him, his officers prepared for the first strike against the Korthik Empire. These were volunteers, every one of them. They had all seen the images from New Eden. They all knew what they were fighting for. "Sir," said Captain Maria Santos, his second in command, "all ships report ready." Bennett nodded. "Open a channel to the fleet." When all ships were listening, Admiral Bennett spoke words that would echo through history. "We go to war today, not for conquest or glory. We go to war for justice." The Korthik believe that might makes right. They believe that being stronger gives them the right to murder children. Today, we teach them what real strength looks like. He paused, thinking of Danny Martinez's silent stare and Katie Sullivan's nightmares. They wanted to show us what happens to species who get in their way. We're going to show them what happens to species who hurt our children. This is not a war for territory or resources. This is extermination. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for the first Korthik system. Behind them, on worlds across human space, people watched the news broadcasts and waited. Parents held their own children a little tighter. Everyone understood that humanity had reached a turning point. Korthik had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for centuries. They had reminded humans that they were predators, descendants of hunters who had once been the most dangerous species on their home. Now, those same hunters were coming for them, and they would not show the mercy that the Korthik had denied. To the children of New Eden, the war for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. The first battle took place at Vextar, a Korthik mining world on the edge of their empire. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace without warning, their black ships appearing like death itself among the stars. Admiral Carl Bennett stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the enemy installations through the main viewer. Below them, Korthik miners worked in the planet's crystal caves, harvesting the materials they used to build their weapons and armor. A small defense fleet of 15 ships guarded the system. "Sir," said Captain Maria Santos, "the Korthik are demanding that we identify ourselves and state our business." Bennett's face was stone. No response. Begin the attack. The Terran War Fleet opened fire without warning, just as the Korthik had done at New Eden. But these were not helpless colonists. These were warships built specifically to kill their enemy, crewed by humans who had seen the burned remains of children's playgrounds. The new resonance weapons worked perfectly. Bright blue beams struck the Korthic ships, and their crystal hulls shattered like glass. The alien vessels tried to return fire, but their red energy weapons bounced harmlessly off the human ship's new armor. "Target the mining platforms," Bennett ordered. "Everything dies." The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, every Korthic ship was destroyed. Every mining station was rubble. The planet below burned as human fighters strafed the surface installations. But Admiral Bennett wasn't finished. "Deploy the bioweapons," he commanded. Dr. Nathan Price's biological weapons fell from the sky like rain. The toxins were invisible and odorless, designed to be absorbed through Korthic skin and breathing organs. Within hours, every Korthic on. The planet was dead. No survivors. Bennett reported to Earth. Moving to the next target. News of Vextar's destruction spread through the Korthic Empire faster than their ships could travel. For the first time in their long history, the Korthic felt fear. These humans were not like the other species they had conquered. These humans fought like demons. The Korthic High Command called an emergency meeting on their capital world. General Krextar, their supreme military leader, studied the reports from Vextar with growing alarm. They showed no mercy. He told the assembled commanders. They didn't demand surrender. They didn't try to capture prisoners. They simply killed everything. "Just as we did to their colony," pointed out Admiral Viksha. "Perhaps they learned from our example." General Krextar's crystalline armor gleamed under the harsh lights of the war room. "Send the Third Fleet to stop them. Show these humans what real warriors can do." The Third Fleet was the pride of the Korthic Empire. 50 of their most advanced warships, commanded by their best officers. They intercepted the human fleet at the Gorvak system, confident that their superior numbers would carry the day. Where wrong got the battle at Gorvak lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Korthic Third Fleet. The humans had learned to fight like their enemy, without mercy, without quarter, without pause. When Korthic ships tried to surrender, the humans destroyed them anyway. Colonel Steve Parker led the ground assault on Gorvak Prime. His Marines wore black armor and carried weapons designed to penetrate Korthic crystal plating. They moved through the alien cities like a plague, killing everything they found. "Remember New Eden," Colonel Parker told his troops before each battle. It became their battle cry, whispered as they pulled triggers and shouted as they charged enemy positions. Korthak fought back with the ferocity of their warrior culture, but they had never faced enemies like these humans. Every human soldier carried pictures of the dead children from New Eden. Every human ship displayed the names of the murdered. Innocents on their hulls. This was not war, as the Korthak understood it. This was extermination, carried out with the cold efficiency of humans who had decided that their enemy deserved nothing but death. Back on Earth, the surviving children of New Eden watched the news broadcasts. Benny Martinez still didn't speak, but his foster parents saw him nod with satisfaction each time another Korthak world fell. Katie Sullivan drew pictures of the battles, always showing the human ships as bright angels destroying dark monsters. "Are you happy that we're winning?" Katie's foster mother asked her one day. Katie looked up with those green eyes that had seen too much. "They killed my mommy and daddy," she said simply. "Now someone is killing them back." The war spread across Korthak space like wildfire. System after system fell to the advancing human fleet. Admiral Bennett's forces grew stronger with each victory, reinforced by ships from every human world. What had started as 150 vessels became 300, then 500. Dr. Nathan Price continued developing new weapons, each one more deadly than the last. He created viruses that attacked Korthak nervous systems. He designed bombs that poisoned their atmosphere. He built weapons that could crack the crystal cores of their home worlds. "How does it feel?" Commander Helen Torres asked him one day, "Designing genocide?" Dr. Price looked up from his laboratory work, his eyes hollow from months of 18-hour days. They started it when they murdered children for fun. "I'm just finishing it." The Korthik tried everything to stop the human advance. They sent assassins to kill human leaders. They attacked human colonies far from the war zone. They even tried to negotiate, offering to share their technology in exchange for peace. Admiral Bennett's response was always the same: complete destruction. They had their chance to be civilized, he told President Foster during one of their regular communications. They chose to be monsters instead. Now they get to find out what real monsters look like. The Korthik Empire began to crumble. Their outer colonies rebelled rather than face human attack. Their military commanders started surrendering entire fleets without fighting. Panic spread through their core worlds as refugees brought stories of human ruthlessness, but the humans showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, they seemed to grow more determined with each victory. Every dead Korthik brought them closer to justice for the children of New Eden. General Krekstar made one final attempt to save his people. He sent a message directly to Admiral Bennett, offering complete surrender in exchange for mercy. "We acknowledge our defeat," the Korthik general said. "We offer to withdraw from all conquered worlds and submit to human authority. Spare our remaining civilians, and we will serve you faithfully." Admiral Bennett's response was broadcast to every ship in the human fleet. "You had civilians on New Eden, too. Children who never hurt anyone, who just wanted to play and learn and grow up. Where was your mercy then?" The message ended there. The war continued. Within 2 years of the New Eden massacre, the Korthik Empire controlled only a handful of systems around their home world. Their once mighty fleet was reduced to a few dozen ships. Their population had dropped from billions to millions as world after world fell to human weapons. The surviving Korthik leaders gathered on their capital world of Korthva, a crystalline planet that had been their species' birthplace for millions of years. They knew the humans were coming. They knew this would be the final battle. General Krekstar stood in his command center, watching the last of his people prepare for their doom. Around him, Korthik civilians loaded onto transport ships, trying to escape to distant corners of the galaxy. But he knew it wouldn't matter. The humans had made their intentions clear. This wasn't about conquest or territory. This was about revenge. This was about showing the galaxy what happened to species who hurt human children. The Korthik had awakened humanity's capacity for absolute war. Now they would pay the ultimate price for their cruelty. In the distance, space began to shimmer as 300 human warships dropped out of hyperspace. The end had come to Korthva. The end had come to the Korthik species. The final battle began at dawn over Korthva, the crystal home world of the Korthik Empire. 300 human warships hung in space like black thunderclouds, their weapons trained on the planet below. This was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, reinforced by ships from every human world. Admiral Carl Bennett stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking down at the world that had given birth to the species that murdered children. Korthva was beautiful in its alien way, a planet of crystal spires and glowing cities that reflected light like diamonds. In a few hours, it would all be dust. "Sir," reported Captain Maria Santos, "we're detecting 43 Korthik ships in defensive positions around the planet. They're requesting permission to surrender." Bennett's face showed no emotion. No response. Begin the attack. The last Korthik fleet fought with desperate courage, knowing they were defending not just their home world, but the survival of their entire species. Their ships darted between the crystal moons of Korthva, using the planet's natural satellites as cover, while they fired their red energy weapons. But it was hopeless. The human fleet had grown too large and too experienced. Ship after ship of crystalline Korthic vessels shattered under the blue beams of resonance weapons. Within 2 hours, the entire enemy fleet was destroyed. Now only the planet remained dot down. On Korthva's surface, General Krextar watched the orbital battle through his command center's crystal windows. Around him, his staff worked frantically to coordinate the planet's defenses, but they all knew the truth. This was the end. "Sir," said his aide, a young Korthic warrior named Thaltar, "the last transport ships are launching. We've evacuated." "As many civilians as possible," Krextar nodded. "Perhaps a few thousand of his people might escape to distant stars and survive." But the Korthic Empire, which had once ruled 40 star systems, was finished. These humans had proven to be more ruthless than any enemy they had ever faced. "General," Veltar continued, "should we try to contact the human commander again? Perhaps if we offer complete surrender." "No," Krextar said quietly. "We showed them what we were when we killed their children. Now they're showing us what they are. There will be no mercy." In space above, Admiral Bennett prepared to deploy Dr. Nathan Price's ultimate weapon. The resonance bomb had taken 18 months to build and could destroy an entire planet by shattering its crystalline core. It would render Korthva completely uninhabitable and eliminate the last breeding grounds of the Korthic species. "Dr. Price," Bennett said into his communicator, "are you ready?" Dr. Nathan Price stood in the Retribution's weapons bay, making final adjustments to the massive bomb. He looked older than his 50 years, worn down by months of creating instruments of genocide. But his hands were steady as he worked. "The weapon is ready, Admiral," Price replied. "One detonation will crack the planet's core and trigger a cascade. Reaction. The entire world will break apart within hours." Bennett nodded. "Prepare for deployment." But first, he had one last message to send. Opening a channel to the planet below, Admiral Bennett addressed the Korthak leadership directly. "General Krextar, this is Admiral Carl Bennett of the Terran. War Fleet, 3 years ago, your people attacked a peaceful human colony called New Eden. You murdered 50,000 innocent people, including 12,000 children. You showed them no mercy. You gave them no chance to surrender. You killed them for the crime of existing." The Admiral's voice remained calm and professional, but every human in the fleet could hear the iron underneath. "You taught us that children are sacred," Bennett continued. "You taught us that some crimes cannot be forgiven. Today, we finish the lesson you started. This is for Danny Martinez. This is for Katie Sullivan. This is for every child who died screaming for parents who couldn't. Save them." The transmission ended. Admiral Bennett turned to his weapons officer. "Deploy the resonance bomb." The massive weapon dropped from the Retribution's belly, falling toward Korthva like a black star. As it descended through the atmosphere, Dr. Price activated the detonation sequence from his control panel. "Resonance bomb armed and ready," he reported. "Detonation in 30 seconds." On the planet's surface, General Krextar stood in his command center and watched death fall from the sky. Around him, his remaining officers maintained their posts with the discipline of true warriors, even though they knew they had only moments. "To live. For the Empire," Krextar said quietly. "For the Empire," his officers replied. The resonance bomb detonated 10 miles below Korthva's surface, sending shock waves through the planet's crystalline core. The effect was devastating and beautiful. Cracks of light spread across the continents as the planet's crystal formations began to shatter. The ground heaved and split as the resonance frequency tore the world apart from within. Cities that had stood for millions of years collapsed in minutes. Crystal spires that had reached toward the stars crumbled into glittering dust. The great crystal seas that had given Korthva its beauty boiled away into space. General Krextar felt the building shake around him as the planet died. Through the crystal windows, he could see the surface breaking apart, great chunks of land rising into the sky before falling back down as rubble. The last thing he saw was a wall of crystal fragments rushing toward him like a glittering avalanche. 6 hours, Korthva was gone. What had once been a beautiful crystal world was now nothing but floating debris and cooling rock. The birthplace of the Korthic species had been erased from the universe, but Admiral Bennett wasn't finished. Over the following months, human strike teams hunted down every remaining Korthic in the galaxy. Some had hidden on remote worlds. Others had tried to blend in with other alien species. A few had attempted to establish secret colonies in unexplored systems. It didn't matter. The humans found them all. Colonel Steve Parker led many of these final missions. His Marines had become experts at tracking Korthic survivors, following even the smallest clues across the galaxy. They showed the same mercy their enemies had shown in New Eden. None at all. How many more? Colonel Parker asked Commander Helen Torres during one of their briefings. Intelligence estimates fewer than 100 individuals remaining, Torres replied. Maybe less. We're tracking down the last few groups now. Good, Parker said. I want them all gone. Every single one. Within 3 years of the New Eden massacre, the Korthek species was extinct. Not a single member survived. Their empire was gone. Their worlds were empty, and their name existed only in human history books, as a warning to other species about what happened to those who harmed human children. The war ended not with celebration, but with quiet memorial services. On Earth, a great monument was built listing the names of every person who had died at New Eden. At the center of the memorial stood statues of 2 children, Danny Martinez and Katie Sullivan, representing all. The innocents who had been lost. Danny, now 13, stood before the memorial and read the names of his friends who had died. He could speak again, though he remained quiet most of the time. The boy who had once taught younger children to play ball was gone, replaced by someone who understood that the universe could be a cruel and dangerous place. Katie Sullivan, now 11, placed white flowers at the base of the memorial. Her bright red hair caught the sunlight as she whispered goodbye to her parents one more time. She still had nightmares sometimes, but they were different now. In her dreams, her parents told her they were proud of what humanity had done to avenge them. President Amanda Foster dedicated the memorial with words that would be remembered for generations. We did not want to become killers. We wanted to explore the stars, to build new worlds, to live in peace with whatever neighbors we might find. But when they slaughtered our children, they chose what we would become. We chose what they would become. Nothing. The surviving children of New Eden grew up knowing they were the reason an entire species had been wiped from existence. Some felt guilty about it. Others felt proud. All of them understood that they had witnessed humanity at both its most vulnerable and its most dangerous. Galaxy took notice. Other alien species had watched the war with growing alarm, seeing how quickly and completely the humans had destroyed an empire that had terrorized space for centuries. Diplomats from dozens of worlds sent messages to Earth, all saying essentially the same thing: we want to be your friends. Humanity returned to peaceful expansion, but everything had changed. Every human ship now carried weapons capable of destroying planets. Every human colony was defended by fleets that could reduce entire star systems to ash. The galaxy had learned what happened to species who threatened human children. Years later, when other species asked humans about the Korthic War, the answer was always the same: they slaughtered our children. We erased their species. Choose your actions carefully. The ruins of Korthva still floated in space, a broken crystal graveyard that served as a monument to the consequences of harming humanities. Young. Sometimes human ships would pass through the debris field, their crews looking out at the shattered remains of a world that had once been home to billions. The message was clear to anyone who saw it. Humanity could be the best friend or the worst enemy any species could imagine. The choice was always up to them. In the end, the Korthak had taught humanity a valuable lesson about their own nature.